Discover the scariest urban legends of Latin America like you've never seen. Humor and terror united in real Laitan stories. Chilling stories that defy reason and make even the most skeptical hesitate before turning off the lights. From El Caleuche, the ghost ship of Chile that glows and vanishes without a trace, to the mysterious La Luz de Yara in Cuba, a light that few dare to follow. Meet El Karai Octubre, the machete-wielding guardian who punishes the careless, and the enigmatic Ladama Tapada from Ecuador, whose beauty hides a chilling secret. These legends span generations, mixing fear and mystery with the feeling that something or someone might be watching. Ready? Then put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and get cozy under your blanket. Let's begin. Colombia, Laata Sola. Laata Sola, the Colombian legend that makes even the most seasoned hunters question their life choices. This mythical figure embodies the phrase, "Not everything is as it seems," or better. Yet not every beautiful woman in the forest is there for good reasons. Laata Sola loves to play, tricks on men who venture alone into the jungle, and she does it in a way that only a legendary creature with a questionable sense of humor could. First, the description. Laata Sola is an incredibly beautiful woman, at least at first glance, with long black hair and a white dress. But like any good scary story, there's a catch. She only has one leg. And don't be fooled into thinking that makes her slower or harmless. No, sir. With that one leg, she hops through the forest with the agility of a caffeine-fueled kangaroo, making you wonder how one leg can make you run so much. The legend begins when a man decides it's a great idea to venture into the woods to hunt, or who knows, impress his friends with stories of bravery. He hears a soft song or a woman's voice calling for help. Of course, he, being the hero he believes he is, decides to follow the sound, already picturing the headline, "Man saves damsel and becomes village hero." But instead he finds Laata Sola, who soon reveals her true form. A terrifying face with sharp teeth and eyes that shine with a mix of gotcha and time to run. The poor guy then bolts, tripping over roots, praying to all the saints and promising never to hunt, help a girl in the forest, or even leave the house without a powerful flashlight again. And Laata Sola. She stays there smirking, waiting for the next victim to teach that the forest has its own rules, and that those who enter thinking they'll come out boasting only end up with scary stories and plenty of humiliation. The moral of this legend is clear. If you're walking alone in the Colombian forest and hear a woman's voice calling, think twice. And if you decide to ignore it and go ahead, don't say I didn't warn you. At the very least, be prepared for a scare that'll make you reconsider your hobbies, and maybe convince you that it's safer and wiser to tell ghost stories sitting at home, with a good Colombian coffee in hand. The legend that makes men think twice before following a beautiful stranger through the historic streets of Quito. This story has all the elements of a good romantic thriller, with a twist worthy of a gotcha you messed up. Ladama Tapada is a mysterious woman, always elegantly dressed and wrapped in a veil that hides her face. The catch? She only appears at night, when the darkness and silence make even the bravest question their choices. It all begins when a gentleman, or a guy who simply had too much canelazo, that warm drink only locals really get, spots this enigmatic woman. She walks with a grace that would take anyone's breath away, and of course our victim of the night thinks he's found love at first sight, or at least an adventure for the night. Without a second thought, he offers to accompany her, thinking he's about to live a story worth bragging about to his friends. As they walk through the narrow cobblestone streets, that floral scent in the air and the flowing veil start to seem less romantic and more suspicious. But of course, who's going to back out halfway through the walk, right? The problem is when Ladama Tapada finally stops, turns slowly to face her companion, and suspense reveals a face straight out of a nightmare. No bright eyes or charming smile. We're talking about a sight so horrifying it makes the guy wish he were back home watching soap operas. The result? The poor guy runs off, tripping over his own feet, promising himself he'll never follow a mysterious woman again, no matter how perfumed or well-dressed she is. The moral of the story? In Quito, it's better to be wary of things that seem too good to be true. And if a mysterious veiled woman invites you for a stroll, it's best to politely wave and go your own way, preferably toward the light and in the opposite direction. So next time you visit Quito and hear stories about Ladama Tapada, remember, Sometimes it's better not to push your luck, especially if it involves veils, mysterious perfumes, and dark streets. After all, no one wants to be the one who comes back home with a racing heart and a story that starts with, "I really thought it was going well until..." Brazil, the Sachi Perere. The Sachi Perere. If there's one character deserving the title of prank king in Brazilian folklore, it's him. Sachi is the kind of figure that makes you wonder, is this real or has my life turned into an episode of supernatural comedy? Described as a black boy with one leg, wearing a red cap and smoking a pipe, he isn't exactly what you picture when you think of menacing villains. But underestimate Sachi because of his appearance and get ready to see your house turn into a circus without tickets. Sachi's specialty? Pulling off the most varied and creative pranks. He loves sneaking into kitchens to burn the beans, hiding one of your socks, never the pair, and tangling up sewing threads into knots that even the most patient person couldn't untie. That time you swore you left your keys on the table and suddenly found them in the freezer. You can bet Sachi had a laugh while making you question your sanity. They say Sachi appears in whirlwinds, and if you're brave enough, you can catch him by throwing a sieve over him. Good luck with that. Because if you do manage to trap him in a bottle, and that's a big if, you'll get one wish. But be careful what you wish for. Sachi is clever and loves to play with words, so you might end up with a wish granted, with an ironic twist that'll make you think, why didn't I just wish for something simple, like him leaving me alone? Despite his mischievous reputation, Sachi isn't evil. He's one of those figures who likes to keep people humble, reminding them that sometimes life needs a little chaos, as long as it's someone else's chaos, of course. He's also a guardian of the forest, protecting plants and animals, and making sure anyone who tries to harm nature pays the price. So if you're planning to chop down a tree, be ready for Sachi to make you rethink your decisions when your axe goes missing or your saw starts playing samba instead of cutting. So next time something inexplicable happens and you find yourself laughing nervously, think of Sachi Perere. He might just be nearby, perched on a branch, chuckling and puffing his pipe as he enjoys your confusion. And remember, in Sachi's world, laughing at yourself is a rule, because if you don't laugh, he'll laugh for you. And honestly, he always has the last laugh. Venezuela, La Laiona. La Laiona is a famous and somewhat ironic legend from Venezuela, known for mixing terror with a touch of poetic justice when it comes to infidelity. They say La Laiona was once a woman named Casilda, very beautiful, and married to a man who loved her deeply. But as in any good morality tale, someone had to spoil the peace. A meddlesome gossip decided to spread the rumor that Casilda's husband was cheating on her with her own mother. Yes, her own mother. Chaos drama that even the best Venezuelan telenovelas couldn't top. Casilda, furious and blinded by jealousy, didn't think twice and did what any protagonist in a tragedy would do. She confronted her mother with murderous rage, without leaving room for explanations, and probably without reading any manuals on nonviolent communication. Casilda killed her mother and, to complete the scene, discovered that it was all a lie. Guilt struck her like lightning, and before dying, Casilda's mother cursed her with the classic words, "You will pay for this." And thus, La Laiona was born. Transformed into a vengeful spirit, La Laiona now roams the roads and forests of Venezuela, with one purpose, to teach unfaithful men a lesson. She appears as a stunningly beautiful woman, with long black hair and a white dress that looks like it came from a haunted fashion editorial. Men who dare to flirt with her quickly learn that her beauty hides a not-so-pleasant surprise. She transforms into a horrifying figure with sharp teeth and flaming eyes, ready to attack and leave the adulterer with more than just a guilty conscience. Of course, like any good legend, La Laiona comes with a moral. If you're thinking about cheating on your wife, it's best to think twice and maybe even 3 times before acting on it. After all, encountering La Laiona isn't exactly the most peaceful way to learn the importance of fidelity. And if you happen to hear a beautiful woman calling out to you on the road at night, their best advice is to keep walking, pick up the pace, and remember that sometimes the easiest way to avoid trouble is to be faithful and honest, or at least not follow a stranger in the middle of nowhere. So if you're in Venezuela and someone tells you not to mess around with infidelity, take it seriously, because La Laiona is always watching, and she's not interested in flimsy excuses or last-minute explanations. Peru. El Pistaco. El Pistaco, the Peruvian legend that makes anyone think twice before accepting an invitation for a nighttime hike in the mountains. This figure is, let's say, the type of monster you definitely don't want to meet, especially if you're feeling a bit plump. You know that moment when you think, I should lose a few pounds? Well, the Pistaco thinks the same, but for reasons that have nothing to do with health. El Pistaco is described as a tall, light-skinned man, often a foreigner or someone who looks like they just walked out of a sunscreen commercial. But before you assume he's just a lost backpacker or a clueless adventurer, know that he carries sharp knives and isn't looking for friends. His specialty: draining fat from his victims. Yes, you read that right. Forget trendy diets. El Pistaco has an old-school and sinister approach to dealing with unwanted body fat. It's said that this legend was born during colonization, when indigenous people viewed Spaniards and other outsiders as mysterious and predatory threats. And let's be honest, if someone shows up out of nowhere in the mountains looking unfriendly and sporting a belt full of knives, they're not exactly the type of person you want to share a chicha morada with, right? El Pistaco thus became a symbol of the fear of the other, and all the strange things that can happen when you least expect them. And spoiler alert, none of them are pleasant. Reports of encounters with El Pistaco vary, but everyone agrees on one thing: it's an experience that makes you rethink your relationship with mountain trails and with anyone who looks a bit too adventurous. They say those who survive an encounter return home pale, sweating cold, and firmly resolved never to leave the safety of a well-lit town again. And from then on, they always go hiking with a friend, preferably one who runs slower. So if you're in Peru and decide to explore the Andes, keep your eyes open. And if you see someone who looks like Indiana Jones's distant cousin, but with a slightly hungry look, the best advice is simple: run. And if someone asks why you came back from the hike so quickly and without your backpack, just say you were training for a marathon and prefer to travel light. After all, explaining that you were fleeing from a fat thief might be hard to believe, at least until they hear the legend. Mexico, La Llorona. La Llorona is one of Mexico's most well-known and terrifying legends, but it's also the one everyone grows up hearing and learning to respect. The story goes that many years ago there was a very beautiful and passionate woman who made a terrible mistake and, filled with remorse, began to wander the riverbanks, crying and calling out, "Ay, mis hijos." What is she searching for? Well, some say it's forgiveness, or maybe just someone to listen to her sorrow. If you're near a river on a calm night and hear a distant cry, your heart might start to beat a little faster. Could it really be La Llorona? You wonder, quickening your pace with a mix of curiosity and better safe than sorry. After all, she's known to appear out of nowhere, dressed in white, with a sorrowful gaze and a tone of voice that would make even the bravest person think twice about continuing on their way. Parents in Mexico have long used this legend with a touch of cleverness to keep children away from the rivers after dark. There's nothing quite like the story of a ghostly mother to convince kids to stay home at night, safe and far from any danger or fright. And if you think adults don't pay attention to these stories, just ask what they'd do if they heard, "Ay, mis hijos." When they're alone, the answers usually involve a quick exit. At its core, the legend of La Llorona is about regret and longing with a hint of warning: respect, the water, and the old stories. So next time you're in Mexico and someone mentions La Llorona, smile and add that if she shows up, you'll promise you were just passing by and are already on your way. After all, you never know, right? Argentina, El Familiar. El Familiar is one of those Argentine tales that makes any sugar mill worker think twice before bragging about having the best job in the world. This legend comes from northern Argentina and tells the story of a supernatural dog, but not just any dog. We're talking about a giant black dog with eyes that glow like burning coals and a presence that would make anyone run, even if they've never run a day in their life. They say El Familiar is the bodyguard of the sugar mills, sent by none other than the devil himself. It all started because, according to the legend, plantation owners wanted abundant harvests and made some rather questionable deals with forces no one wants to meet up close. And the payment? Well, let's just say that one or another worker might retire sooner than expected. So if someone went missing mysteriously, lunchtime conversations were filled with nervous glances, and questions like, "Has anyone seen Jose lately?" The funny part, as if we can call it that, is that over time the legend of El Familiar became an excuse for workers to get out of the night shift. Me? Stay after sunset? No way, what if El Familiar shows up for a visit? And who could blame them? After all, nobody wants to be the next to see a pair of red eyes staring at them from the middle of the field. In the end, El Familiar is one of those stories that mixes a bit of fear with a healthy dose of better safe than sorry. If you're in Argentina and someone shares this legend with a nervous-like smile, join in, laugh along, and, just to be safe, avoid nighttime strolls through the sugarcane fields. After all, you never know when the guardian dog might be on duty. Chile, El Caleuche. El Caleuche is one of the most fascinating and mysterious legends in Chilean folklore, especially popular among the inhabitants of the Chiloé archipelago. It is said that this ghost ship sails silently through the dark, misty waters of the South Pacific. What sets El Caleuche apart from other ghost ships is that it isn't a dark, abandoned vessel. On the contrary, it appears illuminated, filled with music and laughter as if a party were happening on board. The crew of this ship isn't made up of ordinary sailors, but of witches, sea creatures, and souls that have been enchanted or captured. They say that El Caleuche can appear and disappear in the blink of an eye, and those who spot it can consider themselves lucky, or more realistically, in trouble. Anyone who ventures too close or tries to spy on board may suffer the consequences, such as being cursed or becoming lost and disoriented. Local fishermen say that if you see a bright ship and hear music coming from the sea on a foggy night, it's best not to investigate. Prudence dictates keeping your distance, as El Caleuche doesn't like intruders. The ship appears to protect the secrets of the witches and ensure their gatherings remain private. Some stories claim it also carries treasures and riches, but only those initiated into the magical world know how and when this happens. Despite the fear the legend may inspire, it also reflects the respect and admiration that the people of Chiloé have for the sea and its mysteries. El Caleuche is a reminder that the ocean holds one stories beyond human comprehension, and that sometimes the best thing to do is simply listen, respect, and move on. Uruguay, El Lobizón. In Uruguay, one of the most well-known legends is that of El Lobizón, the local version of the part werewolf. But this isn't just any ordinary werewolf. According to tradition, if you're the seventh male child in a family, congratulations. You have a high chance of transforming into El Lobizón on full moon nights. Imagine the shock of a large family when the seventh boy is born. That's the kind of moment when parents look at the newborn baby and think, will he grow up to see love bones and howl at the moon? So the legend states that on full moon nights, El Lobizón shifts from his human form into a half-man, half-wolf creature. He roams the fields and forests, howling and searching for prey. But as before you picture a terrifying movie monster, it's worth noting that according to locals, El Lobizón isn't exactly at the top of the legend food chain. He has a clumsy quality, as if he's more concerned with scaring chickens than hunting people. The image of an angry farmer in pajamas and slippers chasing him with a broom wouldn't be so far-fetched. Traditionally, being the seventh male child was such a cause for concern that for centuries many Uruguayan families began asking the President of the Republic to be the godfather of the seventh son, which, in a way, offered protection against the curse. It's an interesting solution. My son might turn into a werewolf, but at least he'll have an important godfather. And who wouldn't want to have that story to impress friends? Today, El Lobizón is one of those legends told around campfires or during a round of mate, with smirks and glances at the full moon. The moral of the story: if you're the seventh male or child, you can sleep peacefully. The chances of you turning into El Lobizón are lower than you think, and if it happens, at least you'll have a unique excuse for those nighttime wanderings no one can quite explain. Bolivia, El Duende. In Bolivia, everyone knows someone who swears they've had an encounter with El Duende, that mischievous little creature from local folklore. El Duende is described as a small man, usually wearing old-fashioned clothes and a large hat that nearly covers his shrewd eyes. But don't be fooled by his size or his harmless gnome appearance. He has a repertoire of pranks that would make any party clown look like an amateur. Legend has it that El Duende lives in forests and rural areas where he loves to play tricks on the unsuspecting. One of his specialties is luring children away from home with the promise of toys or sweets, basically the folkloric version of follow me for adventures. But instead of leading them to an enchanted world like in fairy tales, he leaves the children lost and confused, as if they'd tried assembling a puzzle without a reference picture. But El Duende also has a romantic side, or something like it. It's said he has a thing for the women with long hair, and when he falls in love he begins to whistle softly to get their attention. If the woman responds to his call, she might find herself in a conversation that starts with compliments and ends with her trying to explain to a half-meter-tall magical being that she's not interested. It's the kind of encounter that makes one reconsider the importance of ignoring certain whistles at night. Older villagers like to share that if you encounter El Duende, the best way to protect yourself is with wit. Legend says he has one small weakness. He can't stand hearing swear words. So if you're walking along a path and hear a strange whistle or feel like you're being followed, shouting a strong "oh damn," they might be enough to make him vanish in a flash, offended and with his hands over his ears. In the end, El Duende serves as a reminder that rural life has its mysteries, and between one legend and another, it's always wise to stay cautious and keep a list of expletives handy, just in that case. After all, you never know when a little man in a big hat might show up to test your sense of humor and patience. Cuba, La Luz de Yara. La Luz de Yara is one of those Cuban legends that makes you think twice before going on a nighttime walk without a good flashlight or company. The story originates from the town of Yara in the province of Granma and tells of a mysterious light that appears out of nowhere, glowing in the dark and moving as if it's determined to make any curious person uneasy or fully spooked, as the case may be. They say this light is the spirit of an indigenous princess who died while trying to warn her people of an impending attack by Spanish conquistadors. Ever since, she has appeared as a floating light, like a lantern without an owner taking a stroll on its own. And let's be honest, if you're out in the countryside at night and see a bright light approaching, your first thought is, probably not. Oh, finally, someone brought a torch to light the way. What's interesting is that, despite being a legend that inspires respect, many people who claim to have seen La Luz de Yara swear that it behaves in a peculiar way. Sometimes the light seems it to come closer, only to back away as if saying, "Oh, so you're brave, huh? Let's see how far that courage goes." Then, of course, the brave soul decides that maybe it's better to leave the nighttime exploring for another time, preferably during the day, when the only lights around are those of the sun. For those more experienced in the area, the rule is clear. If you see La Luz de Yara, don't you follow, don't call out, and definitely don't try to take a photo to show your friends. It's known for disappearing just when someone thinks about getting closer, leaving behind only an unsettling silence and the feeling that something mysterious just happened. And of course, the story that no one will believe when you tell it at the next family gathering. So if you're in Yara and someone mentions the famous light, it's time to not make a light joke about bringing a real flashlight and maybe suggest that the next outing should be at a brighter time of day. Because with La Luz de Yara, you never know. Better to keep the electric light close and the adventurous spirit a bit more in check. Paraguay, El Karai Octubre. El Karai Octubre is a figure in Paraguayan folklore that, just hearing about him, makes many people glance nervously at their pantry. This legend tells the story of a mysterious old man who appears every October 1st, dressed in simple clothes, a large hat, and carrying a machete that, let's be honest, isn't exactly a fashion accessory. His mission? To ensure that no one is wasting food irresponsibly, and if they are, to give them a fright they'll remember for the rest of the month, or maybe for life. It's said that El Karai Octubre visits homes to check if the residents have well-stocked pantries, and have been wise enough to save enough food for the month of October, known as a time of transition and scarcity. If he finds everything in order, he moves on, maybe even with a slight smile and a nod of approval. But if he finds that the family has been careless and the shelves are empty, well, that's when the old man brandishes his machete, more for dramatic effect than anything else, and casts a curse of hunger and hardship for the rest of the month. Of course, no one wants to be the household that El Karai Octubre chooses to lecture. That's Why in Paraguay it's common for families to prepare a special dish at the beginning of October called jopara, a mix of beans and pumpkin, and share it together to ward off the old man and his cursed hunger. It's almost like saying, "Look, Karai, just keep moving. We know how to take care of ourselves and have plenty of beans." Thirsty, the fun part of this story is that it turns into a playful warning within families. If someone grabs at an extra snack without thinking, they might hear, "Careful, El Karai Octubre might stop by," and you'll have to explain it to him. And while everyone laughs, no one risks skipping out on Yopara at the start of the month just in case. So if you find yourself in Paraguay as October rolls in, make sure to try Jopara face, join in your traditions, and keep your pantry stocked. Because with El Karai Octubre, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Or in this case, safe rather than face an unexpected visit from an old man with a machete and a disapproving look. Enjoyed these tales that chill and entertain at the same time? Then don't be like El Karai Octubre and just pass by. Leave a like and help keep these legends alive, and this storyteller motivated. After all, a simple click is way less scary than a visit from Laiona. Thank you to you.